The technique of in vitro fertilization, or IVF, removes several eggs from the ovary for fertilization in the laboratory. After a few days, 1 or 2 of these fertilized eggs, which are now known as embryos, are returned to the uterus in the hope that they implant and become a pregnancy. Women having IVF are given special reproductive hormones to encourage several eggs to develop in the ovaries. Final maturation of the egg itself is induced by the administration of a further hormone. 36 hours later, fluid containing the eggs is drawn from the ovary with a needle. This is usually performed under light sedation in a short outpatient procedure, with the doctor using ultrasound to check proceedings. The eggs collected from the ovary are then mixed with a sample of the male partner's sperm, which has already been washed and concentrated. The eggs and sperm are left in an incubator set at 37 degrees for 24 hours so that fertilization can take place. During this time, only one of the many sperm cells will penetrate the outer layer of the egg and achieve fertilization. Following fertilization, the cells divide and multiply and form an embryo. After 2 or 3 days, a healthy embryo will comprise around 8 cells. It is then transferred to the uterus by means of a thin, flexible tube, where it is left to implant and form a pregnancy. With the technique of intrauterine insemination, sperm is provided either by the male partner or by a third-party donor whose sperm has been stored in a deep-freeze sperm bank. Before insemination, the sperm samples are prepared in the laboratory. They are assessed for safety, quality, and quantity, and then passed through a filtering system for grading and washing. With a syringe and fine tube, the prepared sperm cells are then introduced directly into the cavity of the uterus, beyond the mouth of the womb and the cervix. They immediately make their own way towards the uterine tube. The objective of IUI is to bring these sperm cells as near as possible to the egg. Nevertheless, only the most mobile sperm cells will actually reach the egg, and only one will penetrate the outer layer of the egg to achieve fertilization. But just as in everyday life, there are many times that fertilization fails and the cycle passes without a pregnancy. A further development of IVF is the technique of intracytoplasmic sperm injection, or ICSI for short. This is a method which has revolutionized the treatment of male infertility in recent years and gives men with poor quality sperm the chance of fathering their own children. In natural conception, many millions of sperm cells in each ejaculation are necessary for fertilization. In ICSI, just one may be enough. Women having ICSI are given special reproductive hormones to encourage several eggs to develop in the ovaries. The eggs are then removed from the ovary in a short outpatient procedure. Fertilization in ICSI is achieved by injecting an individual sperm cell into each of the collected eggs. For this purpose, each egg is placed under a very powerful microscope, and a single sperm cell is injected directly into it by means of a very fine needle. Following injection, and after about 24 hours in the incubator, most of the eggs will show signs of fertilization, and the cells divide and multiply to form an embryo. After 2 or 3 days, a healthy embryo will comprise around 8 cells. It is then transferred to the uterus by means of a thin, flexible needle, where it is left to implant and form a pregnancy.
Imagine a world where a woman could bring back her deceased husband by giving birth to him. Or a man could bring back his mother and raise her as his daughter.
If we have a living cell of a dead person, certainly we could in theory clone that individual. We published a paper about a year or two ago where we showed we can actually now create human embryos that are genetically identical to a normal embryo. The only way you would really know whether you could clone a human being is to actually implant that embryo into the uterus of a surrogate mother. Of course, we cannot implant those. That would be considered unethical, so it's unclear whether or not they would give rise to a human being.
Society has vehemently rejected reproductive human cloning. In this climate, it is extremely difficult for geneticists to obtain funding for their research. There is also a shortage of material.
So one of the problems with human cloning is the supply of eggs. So with a mouse or a cow, we can get literally hundreds, if not thousands of eggs. We can go to the slaughterhouse, for instance, and get them for $1 each and get thousands of these cow eggs. With the humans, it took us over a year just to get 5 eggs.
Even if you had the eggs, it could take hundreds of pregnancies to perfect human cloning, a process that could result in scores of babies with horrific genetic damage.
It'd be very much like if you wanted to clone your child, it'd be like sending them up in a rocket with a 50-50 chance it would blow up.
In most of the world, cloning humans is not illegal. One day, a rogue scientist will pull it off. But cloning a person is not the same as duplicating a person.
A lot of people, who have their pets, they want to often clone them, and they want Fluffy back. And what I tell them is, you're not going to get Fluffy back. As a matter of fact, we actually cloned entire herds of cows from a single cell from the same animal, and they develop a whole hierarchy, just like we do in humans. So you have timid cows and aggressive cows, and they're all clones. So they develop their own behavioral patterns. So the environment has a very profound impact on your development.
Let's say we decide to take DNA from Einstein's hair and grow some new Einsteins. Those clones would not be the man who wrote E equals MC squared. Each would have a unique personality shaped by his environment. Clones are like identical twins, born years apart. They may be similar, but they will not be the same. Perhaps the key to life after death is not to grow an entirely new body, but to resurrect the one you have.
Your love affair, and we'll never be wrong.